A very good morning, children. I, Tanima Seth, your English teacher, hope you all are doing well. Children, in today's session, we'll begin with a new story, The Stolen Bacillus by H. G. Wells. H. G. Wells, or to call him Herbert George Wells, was a British author famous for his works of science fiction. His notable works being The Time Machine and The Invisible Man. He would take scientific facts and weave imaginative stories around them. The story The Stolen Bacillus has two main characters in it, around whom the entire story develops or revolves: the bacteriologist and the anarchist. Now, before moving, deeply into the story, you should first understand the meaning of these two words, bacteriologist and anarchist. See, the word bacteriologist comes from the word bacteriology. Bacteriology is a science, all right? It is a branch of microbiology which deals with the identification, study, and cultivation of bacteria, and with their applications in the field of medicine, agriculture, industry, and biotechnology. And a person who studies this science, microbiology, this bacteriology, that not only he studies, but also at the same time he studies the growth, development, and other properties of bacteria, including the positive and the negative effects that bacteria can have on plants, animals, and human, is known as a bacteriologist. All right. Now, the second character is the anarchist. Anarchist come from the word anarchy. Anarchy is actually the state of disorder, confusion, chaos due to absence of any ruling authority, or you can say that a state of society without any government or law. And anarchists are the people who rejects the state of being, ruled, or the very idea of, authority, or you can say that they are of the opinion that there should be no government, there should be, absolute freedom given to the individual. So in the sense, they rejects, or they reject, or they refuse to follow the very laws and orders which is imposed by the government for the well-being of the society. So this story is a science fiction, and the actions of the story, as I've already told you, develop around these two main characters, that is the bacteriologist and the anarchist. To understand the story better, I'll just give a very quick gist of the story. So it will make it easier for you to understand the entire storyline. What happens is that one day the bacteriologist has a visitor to his laboratory who has been described as a pale-faced man. He comes with a letter of introduction from the scientist's friend, good friend of his. The scientist shows this visitor the cholera bacillus under a microscope, and they talk about the disease. But the visitor shows his interest in seeing a living bacteria. So of course, as he demands, the bacteriologist shows him one such bottled cholera and tells him about the possible destruction that it can bring to mankind. Meanwhile, the scientist's wife calls him away for a moment, and when he returns, he finds that his visitor is already, preparing himself to leave the laboratory. As soon as he as soon as the visitor leaves, the bacteriologist realizes that the bottled cholera is missing from his laboratory. The same bottled cholera which he had, showed to his visitor. He realizes quickly that the visitor has stolen it. So of course now he runs after him, and meanwhile his wife also follows him with her husband's shoes, coat and hat. It is here the readers realize that the visitor is an anarchist who came with an intention to steal the bacteria and release it into the water supply of London, so that he could create chaos, confusion, death, destruction and his terror among the people. However, he accidentally breaks the glass vial in which he was carrying that cholera in the speeding cab. He drinks the remaining bit of it and thinks to be infected. Now he stops running and he directly confronts the bacteriologist who was chasing him. But here comes the twist in the climax. So let's begin reading the story together and find for yourself what possible twists can be there at the end, which can either give a new direction to the story, or it also can be a surprise ending to the readers, for the readers of course. So let's begin. This again, said the bacteriologist, slipping a glass slide under the microscope, is a preparation of the celebrated bacillus of cholera, the cholera germ. So the bacteriologist happens to show his visitor the different kind of bacteria or germs. So of course we see over here that he is telling him, he is giving him an insight into his laboratory, and he has brought the cholera germ, which is on a glass slide, and he has kept it under the microscope so that the visitor could see it closely. As the microorganisms are of course not visible to humans eye, so of course we need to see it through the, or observe it closely through the microscope. Bacillus is actually the rod shaped bacterium, a very small organism or microorganism, organism or microorganism. And the cholera is a bacterial disease of the small intestine, and it causes severe vomiting and diarrhea. So that is a possibility of this germ. So he was showing it to this visitor. The pale-faced man peered down the microscope. Peered down, that is, he was looking with great difficulty down the microscope to observe these microorganisms. He was evidently not used to that kind of thing, and held a limb that is something which is lacking strength, really soft and loose white hand over his free eye. I see very little, he said. So now this man, he was, as it is, he was looking down with great difficulty over the microscope so that he could have a look or closely observe this cholera germ. And of course for the scientists, it's it is a common practice for them, but for common people like us, it is, we are not used to the microscope, and so of course we need to adjust the focus and see. So it was not clearly visible to him. He was not used to such kind of a thing, and while doing so, he was of course he held his soft loose hand over his free eye, And he said it to the he told it to the bacteriologist that he was able to see it, but it was really little. "Touch this screw," said the bacteriologist. "Perhaps the microscope is out of focus for you. Eyes vary so much, just a fraction of a turn this way or that." So the bacteriologist advised him to adjust the screw of the microscope so that he might adjust the focus accordingly. As you can even see it in the picture over here, the microscope. All right, so he asked him to touch the screw and adjust its focus, zoom it a little in or out, so that he could easily see the cholera germ. He could observe the cholera germ under that microscope. "Ah, now I see," said the visitor. So after, of course, adjusting the focus, he is now able to see it. "Not so very much to see after all. Little streaks and shreds of pink. And yet those little particles, those mere atomies, might multiply and devastate a city. Wonderful." Now, of course, he tells it that, of course, still he is not able to see it completely, but it is, it is like thin streaks over here, thin bits of, something pink in color. And at the same time, he is also explaining the possibility of the danger or the destruction that these atomies, that is these tiny particles, have the potential of, the potential to destroy. They'll of course multiply and they can devastate, that is destroy the entire city. He stood up and, releasing the glass slip from the microscope, held it in his hand towards the window. "Scarcely visible," he said, looking carefully at the preparation. He hesitated. "Are these alive? Are they dangerous now?" So now he stood up, he took that glass slip under the microscope and he held it in his hand towards, the direction of the window. And he was again trying to look at it, and he says that it is hardly visible. Scarcely, that is, it is hardly visible. As he was carefully, looking at the preparation, he comments so. And with great hesitation, now he puts forth the question to the scientist that, he was asking whether the germ was alive, the bacteria was alive or not. Because actually he has come with that purpose. If he would find such bacteria which would be active, which would be alive, then of course he will steal it and he will be, he'll steal it and of course he will spread the infection in the entire city. So he had come with that intention. So therefore, with great hesitation, he finally asked him that whether these bacteria were the bacteria was alive or not. Were they dangerous? Of course, if they were alive, then they would have been dangerous. To this, the bacteriologist replied, "Those have been stained and killed. That is, they have been discolored, they have been killed," said the bacteriologist. "I wish, for my own part, we could kill and stain every one of them in the universe." So, of course, the bacteriologist, he happens to present his wish in front of this anarchist, the visitor. He tells him that for his part, he would love to kill and stain every such, dangerous germ or bacteria that is present in the universe. He would like to eliminate, he would like to kill all such, bacteria or germs which could possibly create havoc or destruction for the entire human race. "I suppose," the pale man said with a slight smile, "you scarcely care to have such things about you in the active state." Now the second question posed by him. Of course, with great hesitation, he again asks the scientist that he supposes that under no circumstances the scientist is allowed to keep such bacteria in its living form, in the active form. To this, the bacteriologist replies, "On the contrary, we are obliged, that is, we are required to keep even such things. Here, for instance," he walked across the room and took up one of several sealed tubes. Here is the living thing. So of course he happened to now show him the living bacteria and tells him that this is a cultivation of the actual living disease bacteria, cultivation that is growing, multiplying of the actual living disease bacteria. He hesitated, of course, in telling a visitor so, but finally he revealed it to him that it is bottled cholera, so to speak. So we can see this in the very picture that he has brought that sealed tube, the bottled cholera, and he is showing it to the visitor. A slight gleam of satisfaction appeared momentarily in the face of the pale man. Now, of course, this is what he had intended. This is what he wanted, right? So that he would display, the scientist would display him the actual live bacteria, and then, of course, he'll find the opportunity to steal it. So now when he had exposed, or you can we can say over here that when the bacteriologist has given him the exposure of the living bacteria, now his expressions changed. Now he was, satisfied. And that glow of satisfaction, the little glow of satisfaction, though it was momentarily for some moment, it happened to be there in the face of the pale man, but of course he was happy about the fact. And now the second thing which was running in his mind was that how he would be able to clearly steal the tube from there. The bacteriologist held the tube in his hand thoughtfully. Yes, here is the offending bacterium imprisoned. Now see over here, he is explaining, the bacteriologist is explaining the possible, possible dangers, the potential of destruction that these tiny germs may, create. So in this entire paragraph, he is explaining the potential of destruction that it might, create, of course, if it is released into a supply of drinking water, how it would multiply, how it would, infect human beings and, maybe the other living organisms. And of course, there will be the result, the consequence of it will be that there will be death and pain all over the city. So here he says, he describes this bacteria as offending, that is attacking. Of course, such things would, if released, then it would attack, it would multiply, and it can cause, human toll. Offending bacteria imprisoned. So he says that of course he has imprisoned, he has, prisoned it. I mean, he has sealed it, because of course if it will be left open, then it would cause destruction. Only break such a little tube as this into a supply of drinking water, say to these minute particles of life, go forth, increase and multiply. So now he is imagining, he's saying that if you will say to these tiny particles that come on, go ahead, you can now increase, you multiply and cause death and destruction. So of course these tiny particles would do so. So actually he is only, describing the destruction potential of this germ if released into, into the supply of drinking water. So he is trying to explain this fact to the visitor, but of course he was unaware of the fact that he had come with that intention only. All right, he wanted to steal away this germ from here, and of course he wanted to infect the entire city. Go forth, increase and multiply, and death, mysterious, untraceable death that cannot be traced, cannot be found. Death swift, that is quick and terrible, death full of pain and shame would be released upon this city. So of course he is exaggerating over here, but at the same time he is describing the power that these tiny particles have, that they can cause so much destruction to human life. There would be, innumerable deaths which would occur in the city if people are, will get infected by it. The pale-faced man nodded. His eyes shone. Now, he was All the more he was more confident, he was satisfied that finally he had got, what he actually wanted, the scientist had shown it to him. Now the only challenge for him was how to uh, recede it from the uh, laboratory, how to steal it away from the laboratory. He cleared his throat. These anarchists, rascals, said he, are fools, blind fools to use bombs when this kind of thing is available, I think. Now, over here, of course, he criticizes the anarchists, calling them, fools, that why to use bombs when such kind of microorganisms can create havoc, then why to use, the atomic bombs? And of course, while using atomic bombs, the terrorists, they of course get arrested, they can be caught, but by using such micro organisms, nobody would come to know that who, has actually spread this, or they would not be able to uh, assess or analyze the very origin of the thing. And of course, the anarchist would uh, get free of any of such suspicion, and so it will become easy for him to, escape the situation. He will not be get caught. He would be able to clearly, or such, if of course they will use such kind of microorganisms to create this destruction and to maintain their terror, they will not get caught ever. A gentle rap, a mere light touch of the fingernails was heard at the door. Rap over here, the knock. So there was a knock at the door, and the bacteriologist happened to open the door. It was his wife. Just a minute, dear, whispered his wife. So he just wanted him for a minute. So he was away to attend his wife. And meanwhile, in the laboratory, this visitor was all alone, and he had been away. The bacteriologist had been away just for a minute to attend, of course, to listen to his wife's call. Of course, I know the story has now, it would seem to be interesting to you all, of course, but I want you all again to go through the explanation till here, as well as much before it. Uh, Also, listen to the summary, the very short summary that I have given or explained, in this video lecture. It will help you to understand the plot line of the story itself, the storyline of this story specifically. So for better understanding, kindly go through the video again and attempt some of the difficult words in your notebook. Thank you. Bye bye.